the bat, in comparison to a lot of other grape varieties, they grow really well in a hotter, wetter climate. So
that's handy.
It is handy, especially these days up here in the Hunter Valley.
Sure.
Goes a long way to get us good fruit. But these aren't actually grown in the Hunter Valley. These ones in particular come out of the Adelaide Hills. Now, there's over 800 different varieties of Italian grape varieties, and we were lucky enough to get our hands on 4 of them grown right here in this country.
So just for context, there's over 800 Italian grape varieties in Italy.
Yes.
But here in Australia, a much smaller
I think
amount.
There's about 30 different varieties.
30 to 40, we believe. It's hard to exactly know because there's some really small plantings in odd regions in Australia. You know, someone might only have, you know, one row of something as a bit something experimental, or the nurseries might be playing with it. But commercially, what you can get in the wine world, bottle shop, cellar door, etc.
About 30.
I think 30 is a fair number. And then by tomorrow, it'll probably be 31.
Who knows?
Who knows? And that evolution and change is exactly what these wines are all about, because things have changed over the years. They've changed in the wine industry in Australia and our food and wine culture.
Our willingness to explore new things, without a doubt.
Yeah, and that's where these wines, or the Winemakers craft wines, are all about. So we have in front of us today 4 different grape varieties.
And these varieties represent 4 different regions out of Italy.
Sure.
As well.
Or 5, really.
5 different regions,
But keep in mind, these grapes were grown in Australia. So they're our Aussified version of what's happening in Italy. So to start with, we've got... Actually, let's come back to the varieties and let's talk about how we got
to where we are today.
Sure.
Absolutely.
So let's look at the Australian wine industry 70 years ago. Quite a bit of time before me.
In Australia for the better part of 100 years. And
wine.
And before the 1950s, it was really fortified, and that was about it.
Ports and sherries, Madeiras, those sorts of things. You know, things you could keep open for a week.
Things that you could ship to the other side of the world.
Yeah, because remember, you know, planes and those sorts of things really didn't exist in a commercial sense for freight. Things were in the hull of ships. And this was pre the big immigration boom into Australia out of Europe. So pre-1950s, look, we're really looking at a very English Australia.
A very different society to what we have now.
For sure. Food-wise, culture. You know, if you wanted olive oil, you pop down to the pharmacy rather than the supermarket.
If you want to chuck a handful of garlic into your cooking for your spag bowl, didn't exist. Not a real thing.
What's garlic?
Didn't really exist in Australia before the 50s.
Bangers and mash with no garlic. That sounds terrible. Absolutely terrible. So then by the time the 50s and 60s rocked around, we saw a lot of guys and girls come to this side of the world.
From around the world. Absolutely. It wasn't localized to one part of the planet. It was from Europe, from Asia, from America, from Africa. Everyone was coming to Australia for new opportunities, to follow their dreams, to live a new life.
Keep in mind that the 50s, you know, this is obviously not too long after the end of the Second World War.
Absolutely.
And we were very lucky. You know, Australia's on the bum end of the globe, and there's a reason why people wanted to come here, because it was
away from
everything else. And with them, they brought one suitcase, which included, some of them had clothes and some of them had
grape cuttings.
Grapevine cuttings.
Now, among those these immigrants that came to Australia, our owners are descended from them. Alessandro Loretti, which you would have seen in our Black Label wines, our Alessandro range, is named after Alessandro Loretti, who was one of the first boats to come all the way over from Italy to Australia and set up a new life here.
And I guess Alessandro and his friends and family and colleagues and all the people that he would have met on the boat, or others that came on different ships, they brought with them, they brought a suitcase, but they brought so much more than
that. With that suitcase, they brought a culture.
They did. They brought a culture to Australia. Definitely the Italians, the Greeks, the Spanish, you know, you name it. There's all these different countries around the world that their culture is very different to the English, for example, or the traditional culture that you would have seen in Australia pre-European settlement. And now we're a mixing pot of that in our blood and what we do, and in our wine and in our food. So let's go down the wine and food side of things, shall we? Because that's really
like
what we're here for.
That's why we're here.
It's time to have a look at a few glasses in front of us.
Yeah. Now, really, there's as we can see, there are about 4 different regions in Australia where we grow fruit. We have
states, I think, is what you're getting at.
New South Wales, Victoria, Western Australia, South Australia. We don't see a whole lot coming from Queensland or the Northern Territory.
There is vineyards in NT. There is.
It does exist. Yeah. We don't talk about them. Anyway.
But if you're in Alice Springs, check out the vineyard. Or if you're in Broken Hill in Western New South Wales, check their vineyards out too.
Yeah. Anyway, these wines are all from South Australia. We have McLaren Vale and the Adelaide Hills in these wines.
Yep.
Now, these are beautiful regions to grow these varieties because they represent the Italian land where the grapes were originally grown. They have a similar climate, a similar soil type. They have similar rainfall and weather conditions. And so because of that, we are able to create a really authentic representation of these wines in the bottle.
As I said before, Aussified, right?
Aussified indeed. They definitely aren't Italian. We don't claim that they are. And I think it's good that we can have a modern Australian take on what we're making. Now, we have...
there's no, as far as we're aware, there's no true native Australian grape varieties, right? So
they just found the first native Australian coffee bean.
Oh,
yeah.
That's cool.
That is pretty cool. So who knows? Anyway, we have 4 different varieties here with us today. We have our Aglianico.
You have what?
Aglianico is what it looks like. It's Aglianico. You say AG as a UH. Aglianico. Again, we say everything with our hands to really get the point across.
The Italians must talk with their hands.
You got to say your syllables. Aglianico. Then we have our Barbera. Now, that's the easiest one of the lot, the Barbera. We have a Sagrantino.
Sagrantino.
Yeah.
Close enough, good enough.
Again, with your hands. And the Montepulciano, as many 1, 2, 3, 4s as you can.
And because Aussies love to simplify things, we call it Monty.
Yep. So we've got the Aggie, the Barb, the Sag, and the Monty.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Perfect. Righto. Let's start at the start, hey?
Absolutely. Now, with all of these wines, the tasting order for these wines is really convenient. It is in alphabetical order. And so we're going to start off with the Aglianico.
Start with A?
Yep, start with A.
Righto. So Aglianico, where's this originally famous for?
Yep. So Aglianico is a grape variety that grows brilliantly in volcanic soil. So that's the southern end of Italy. And so we have regions...
Not all the way down the bottom.
Not down the bottom, not on the tip of the boot.
Bottom-ish.
Yeah, in Basilicata and Campania. Aglianico del Volcer is one of the best regions in the world to grow it. And that is on volcanic soil. Now, the Adelaide Hills is similar in that it has that really heavy granite, high nutrient, high phosphorus soil that grows Aglianico very well.
But this is pretty new to Australia.
It is indeed.
I think this grape variety's only been in Australia for, under 20 years, right? The late 90s, I think.
Yes, at the absolute earliest, I think.
Now,
that's good.
The Aglianico, we're deliberately starting, it's not because it's A in the alphabet, it's because this is the lightest of the 4 wines.
Yep.
It's the softest.
It's,
I guess, the brightest in comparison to the others. I find this wine, it's like a bucket load of cherries and strawberries.
Yeah,
and it's really quite
cherries
silky.
For Christmas to me. You get those really ripe cherries in a big cardboard box, and that just jumps out of the glass.
We were talking about this the other day. There's a difference between ripe cherries, natural style cherries, and then there's that super sweet glazed cherry sort of character. It's not that avenue. No. It's still fresh.
Yep. Very much so.
Got to pick the
little bit of green
stem out of its style.
It's fresh. It's bright. It really lightens up your palate. Now, it's not a super long-term cellaring wine. It's not super high in tannin. It's got a beautiful bit of acid. Really makes your mouth water, which is what you want to see.
It's pretty
and
cruisy,
because of that,
isn't
it goes really nicely with your leaner style of meats, your tomato-based dishes. Brilliant for something like bruschetta and salami plates and things like that. So,
alternatively, if sacrilegious, especially from the Italian side of it, if you don't want to have food with it, this is probably the wine that's light enough to just have by itself as a glass of wine.
I think this is both this one and the next one we'll try. In my opinion, are very much spring wines. If you're coming in and you want to open a red in the warmer days of spring, these 2 wines are going to be the best.
That's pretty convenient, seeing it's September. How handy is that?
Mm-hmm.
Righto. B.
B for Barbera.
B for Barbera, not Barbara. but we love Barbaras.
We do.
But we also love a good glass of Barbera, hey?
Yep, it's brilliant. This is a grape from the Piedmont region. Now, that is up north in the same sort of area of Italy where they grow some of the best Nebbiolo in the world. You might have heard of Barolo. This is Barolo's slightly lesser known cousin that has a brilliant, big, bright body to it. It's very juicy as well, much like the Aglianico. It's a bit more full on. It's definitely not in the region of Cab Savs, but it does have a bit more body to it. It is standing up for itself.
Sure. The mention of Cab Sav, a bit of a prompt there because we forgot.
Yeah.
Just going back a step to the Aglianico, if you're exploring these varieties, you're new to them, you've never heard them, you don't know how to say it, you're probably wondering, hey,
what does it taste like?
What's it taste like in comparison to something I already have in my wine cellar that I can get from the bottle shop or my closest cellar door? Aglianico, lighter, brighter style. Think things like Pinot Noir, Grenache, the lighter end of Sangiovese, those sorts of things.
Yep.
So if you like lighter, fresher styles of wines,
the Aglianico is the way to go.
That's where the action is.
Now, again, back to this sacrilege thing that we were talking about before. I personally think that the Aglianico can do quite well not at room temperature. I think it needs to be a little bit below room temperature just to shine that acid off a bit more. Now, we're coming to spring and summer. If you're having it at 35 degrees, you're going to be drinking a very thick, viscous wine. All of these varietals produce a high amount of glycerol, which is what really gives you that thick, almost sweet character in the wine. It needs to be cooler to balance that with the acid. So if you have it closer to 12, 14 degrees rather than 20, 25, you'll enjoy all of these wines a lot more.
Make sure you have all of these wines. If you really can, sort of 16 to 18 degrees is normally the money mark for red wines. But with these lighter wines, they can handle being a little bit cooler if you want to go down that line.
My rule of thumb for that, if you're drinking a red wine that you want to be chilled, keep it in the fridge and take it out of the fridge half an hour before you drink it. That half an hour should give it enough time to be the perfect temperature.
Yep, agreed with that.
All right, back to the Barbera.
Back to Barbera, mate.
Barbera. My bad. You got
the Barbs. Rightio. What do we know about Barbera, mate? It's been in Australia a lot longer than these other varieties.
It has. So it's been in Australia since around about the 60s, I believe.
Jeez.
So
we can claim it as Australian then, surely.
Just about.
And we normally claim everyone else that's been here for 5 minutes as Aussies.
Exactly right.
Especially if they're winning us medals or something to that effect, hey? Now, this wine...
Oh, yum. Far. Now, like I said, this wine is a bit stronger. The Aglianico is fresh and light and floaty. And this one, the flavor concentration in this is insane.
It's juicy.
Yeah, you get
so much going
fruit on. And you know what it screams to me? Like, do you remember eating roll-ups as a kid? Those blackcurrant, blackberry roll-ups. It has this black currants and these blackberries and these really ripe raspberries running the entire length of the wine from the front to the back of your palate.
I'm sure that kids would love a bottle of this in their recess lunchbox at school. Not appropriate, but... Righto. So, Barbera.
Now, what are we likening this to? Again, this is not quite in our bluegrass Cab Sav sort of territory, I don't imagine. This is probably reaching a bit closer to your Gamay, your Mouvedres, Mataros.
Yeah, or I guess you're looking at those traditional varieties that Mr. and Mrs. average wine drinker would know is things like Shiraz or Merlot. But Shiraz being Hunter Valley style, so the medium-bodied style of wine, because of course Shiraz or Shiraz in Australia can be big and grunty, but they can also be medium-bodied and softer.
Yep, absolutely.
That's where this style of wine falls into play, right?
Yeah, and if you had our Mudgee Merlot as well in our Alessandro range, it's probably on that sort of body line as well. It's got all that flavor, but without trying to drown you in tannins.
For sure. Yeah. It's got a lovely, soft, elegant finish to this wine, doesn't it?
Yep. Again, much like the Aglianico, shorter term cellaring. You don't really need to have it sitting around for 10 years. This is drinking now till 2025 beautifully, I reckon.
3 to 5 years for the Aglianico and the Barbera for sure. Food-wise,
again, this is really nice, quite creamy and thicker foods like mushroom risottos. Now, we actually have a whole heap of mushroom risotto here with us because we just wanted to see how it tasted, and it is looking brilliant with that.
I think we might leave that till later. No one really wants to see us eating on screen for a second time in a week. I don't think we need to go down that avenue. But yes, things like risotto that are a bit more flavoursome, but they're not hugely powerful or they're not fatty.
You want something that this is going to complement, not that you don't want the food to take over the wine.
Correct.
In this case,
you always want your wine and food to complement each other as much as possible.
Absolutely.
Now, there is argument to totally do the opposite and make sure your food and wine are polar opposites.
Yep.
That's a totally different conversation for another podcast, I reckon, later on. Which leads us to wine number three.
Yep. Now, this is one that you will have likely seen before. This is our... All right.
That's four.
All right, never mind.
Wine three.
Wine three is...
Unless I said four. I might have said four.
No, you said three. I just thought we were going in alphabetical order. All right. Anyway, wine three is something you have not seen before. This is our Sagrantino.
The Sagrantino.
Yep, this is the Sag. Now, this is a wine from Umbria. This is central Italy. It's not in the north where it's cold. It's not in the south where it's volcanic. It's right in the middle of the ground, right next to Abruzzo. It makes a really nice, quite tannin heavy. It's got very rich soil there that really encourages the growth of the tannins in the fruit. It's a big wine. Of the three of these wines that we've tasted, these new Italian varieties we're bringing out, this is without a doubt the biggest, I believe.
For sure. So of these three first varieties, the Aglianico, the Barbera, and the Sagrantino, these are all from the Adelaide Hills in South Australia. This is the biggest
of the three,
boldest, gruntiest of the three.
Yep.
Now, if you're a Sadler's Wine fan, and you probably are, that's why you're watching, or we'd like to hope so, in comparison to other wines that we have in our normal cellar door offering, we're probably looking at things like Cabernet or Langhorne Creek Shiraz.
Absolutely.
Something with a bit more tannin. Now, those wines, especially if you go into our Alessandro range, they are going to be bigger again.
Yep.
But it's in that ilk.
Yep. This wine, again, it's really... So with the Aglianico, we had nice, light, red, fresh cherries. This Sagrantino is leaning much more into that black forest character. You have dark cherries, you have a bit of cocoa, you have
a little bit of that mockery sort of
character.
That
real mocha chocolate coffee sort of thing. It is. And it even has this natural vanilla character to it, I think, going on there. You see a lot of tannin vanilla coming from barrels, but this is coming from the grape itself, I find.
Yeah, good point. We didn't talk about oak maturation on any of these wines yet. We actually kept things relatively simple in the fact that we treated all three of these wines effectively the same. And the reason for that is these are new to us.
We need to see how they go.
We need to see what happens. You know, is this barrel better? Is this barrel not as good? What works here? So these were evenly spread, about 30 to 40% French and some American oak as well.
It was all old timber.
Yeah, and also some larger format barrels. So no brand new wood, but also some puncheons, hogsheads, and barriques.
Some 300s and some 220s.
So in theory, the oak influence on these three wines should be pretty much the same.
And there shouldn't be much there at all.
No, so the tannin structure you're seeing in this last wine is driven by the grape, not the barrel.
Absolutely. So I imagine Sagrantino is a very thick-skinned, big-seeded grape to get that sort of big tannin structure that we're seeing in this wine.
Yeah. Now, food-wise?
Absolutely.
Got to be where the action is.
Without a doubt. Some of you may have seen or heard of this beautiful Italian cookbook that we're releasing as part of this Italian wines range. And in that is this beautiful recipe for ragu polenta. And it's to die for. There you go. Brett's got one in his hand.
Handy.
This is something that goes in big, rich, meaty, saucy dishes. Something
with a bit of fat floating around.
Lots of fat. Yeah, this is your hearty winter meals, 100%.
Yep.
This is what you want to share with the family because it's a big wine that deserves it.
Sure. So those tannins as well, that's going to lead you to a bit more time in the cellar. Should you wish.
Absolutely. I think that little vanilla character that I'm seeing is going to compound over the years. I reckon you could leave this for the same sort of age you would leave most Shirazes. So the better part of 6 to 8 years would do well on this wine as well.
Yeah, 5 to 8, somewhere like that.
Yep. Of course, like Brett said, all of these wines are new to us. We can't guarantee that because we simply haven't aged them ourselves yet. They're only 2021, but we'll keep you up to date. We're going to try them as much as we can.
I think more to the point, actually, we'd love you guys to keep us up to date.
Absolutely.
Please, over the time, send us a message, or if you're in the cellar door and you've had one in your cellar for a period of time, we do love to hear feedback.
Absolutely, we do.
And especially, and with the other wines that we produce as well, please send your feedback to us because unless you're telling us, we don't know.
And we do love to hear your feedback. Now, the last
Gives
wine,
us
the
a
one
fourth,
that I
fourth wine.
Yep, the fourth wine. This is the one that you've seen before. This is the one I started off before. The Montepulciano. If you've been to the cellar door any time in the last year and a half, you should have seen this wine. It's got a couple of years on it now. Like I said, all three of these other Italians are 2021s. This is 2019, isn't it?
So 2021 in the Adelaide Hills for the fruit, and then this wine 2019 and McLaren Vale. The region next to the Adelaide Hills. It's certainly not very far away, but just to let you in on that this information.
Montepulciano, again, of course, an Italian variety, originates from the area of Abruzzo on the eastern seaboard in central Italy.
Now, that's convenient because I believe that's the part of Italy that the Loretti family are originally from.
Right out of Abruzzo, and they brought with them some brilliant opinions on wine, and they've really helped to craft these wines into what they are today.
So look, the Monty is, as Sam said, this is a wine that we released last year. It was the first of our Winemakers Craft single suitcase series of wines. It's got a little bit of age on it, so it's starting to soften, and you're starting to slightly see those secondary characters coming out in the wine. So a little bit of sort of
I
not
see this
chalkiness,
almost big jam, like this nice dried fruit character starting to develop, along with those fresh fruit characters that are still there, because it is a young wine still.
Still pretty young. You're right. It still is only 3 years. It's certainly not old by any stretch of the imagination.
Absolutely.
Now, food-wise, this, along with the Sagrantino, you're thinking more meat-orientated dishes. So if you want to go lamb and beef, those sorts of things, that works really quite well with
for
Monty.
me, this screams barbecue wine.
The
one that gives me the food that's always sticks out to me with this Montepulciano is char-grilled lamb chops on the barbie. That just screams this wine to me.
Or if you want to go homemade pizza with the lot, whichever the lot that is for you. I know that, you know, the traditional Italian guys, it's all about the base. We know that. Aussies like to Aussify things, which means put everything on it. But yeah, pizza, pasta, those sorts of flavoursome.
Absolutely.
Family friendly, because that's what all these wines are about at the end of the day,
speaking of family friendly, like we said, we have this beautiful Italian cookbook, and in that cookbook, we have a beautiful recipe from Nonna Maria, the matriarch of the Loretti family herself, her own meatball recipe, which is to die for. So we would love you guys to have a crack at all of these recipes and tell us what you think of them. Send us photos. We'd love to know what you would do to them to make them your own as well.
So that leads us to, how do you guys and girls get hold of these wines?
Absolutely.
A couple of different options. Very simply, you can jump onto our website, saddlerscreek.com.au, jump on the web store there, and pop into the cart the mixed case of wines. There's a couple of different options. You can buy a mixed dozen. Now, for the first week, or until the end of this week, Friday, we do have an offer where you'll receive 2 of the 12 bottles in the mixed dozen are actually, they're on us.
We're our shout. So you get 12 bottles. You're only paying for 10 of them because 2 of them are on.
It's like an Italian dozen. That's pretty good.
Italian dozen.
And then in that, we'll have a hard copy of the recipe book that has in here a bunch of recipes from the different members of the Loretti family: Frank, Wendy,
Letty, Wendy,
Joe, Serge. I think everyone gets a go in here.
Absolutely.
So please check this out and cook some of these.
Absolutely. These are all hand packed by me, so you know it's quality.
And then you also, look, if you've only got half a dozen holes in your wine rack at the moment, then there is a 6-pack opportunity as well.
That's our brand new ones.
So it only has 2. It has 2 bottles of the brand new wines, whereas the mixed dozen is a mix of all 4.
So the 6-pack is the Sagrantino, the Barbera, and the Aglianico, and the mixed dozen also has 3 bottles of the Montepulciano as well.
And alternatively, if you're local to the winery, or you're coming to the Hunter Valley in the distant, not too distant future, the Sunday masterclass, lunch, Italian tasting,
I think that's what it is.
Coming up.
So you get to explore all of these Italian varietals with your Sunday lunch. How brilliant is that? Now, this comes with a 3-course sit-down lunch. Is that including the dolce at the end?
2 courses.
2 courses. With a bonus sweet course at the end. So
it's effectively
it's
3.
a 3-course,
And then through that, we will, well, not us, but Scotty and the fantastic team in the cellar door will guide you through similar to what we're
wines.
doing
Absolutely.
here, all of these wines, and match them with different food opportunities. If you miss out, unfortunately, there is limited seats to these tastings, but if you miss out and you'd really just like to come to the winery and chill out,
absolutely.
You do have
These
the
wines are all on the cellar door at the moment.
do have the opportunity, if it's just a lovely day and you'd like to sit out in the picnic area, in particular of a weekend, and grab some food from the food van.
And a bottle of Alianico.
And a bottle of Alianico or Barbera or whichever, you are more than welcome. So please pop via the cellar door,
Absolutely.
book online, jump online and order some vino, and you'll get the recipe book as well. And look, if you're popping into the cellar door, we have these available. You can grab one from the cellar door staff.
Absolutely. And that not only includes the recipes, but it also includes a series of tasting notes for all of these wines too. So if there's anything here that we haven't covered, it's hopefully in there. And if it's not, send us an email, because we love, I love to chat about wines. I could carry it away fairly often. So feel free to send us an email and ask us any questions you need to.
Sounds good. Look, if you've got any comments, any questions, feel free to jot them below in the thread there. Alternatively, give us a buzz, flick us an email, pop into the cellar door. On that note, here's cheers to the Winemakers Craft single suitcase series of wines.
That's it.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys.